And that's about it from a wildlife perspective. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Duane. Our next speaker is going to be representing the Indigenous Environmental Network. There are a lot of tribal communities that are affected by the current pipeline and some of the proposed pipelines. So Marty is going to talk about how it's affecting your community and what we can do to help stop it.
Thanks, Jen. My name is Marty Cobenais. I work with the Indigenous Environmental Network. I am a Red Lake enrollee, and I'm originally from Bemidji, Minnesota. That's where my offices are. That's where I drove from yesterday, too. Coincidentally, if you want to go on. This is what we're looking at. This is an actual picture of the dirty tar sands. It's pretty simple. Looks ugly. Go ahead. I'm going to go flying through this too. This is where we're at. I think everyone else has kind of already covered that, where the tar sands are at. Actual size. The government has just come out saying that it is 140 square kilometers, or 54,000 square miles. Some people say it's bigger in England and Wales combined. But then when you compare it to the states on the US, it is actually a little bit smaller than the state of New York, which is the 27th largest state in the United States. So there's still, 20-some states that are smaller than this. So this is bigger than 27 or 26 states. Go ahead. How is it obtained? I'm going to try to just flash through most of this stuff since Paul's already covered most of this stuff. Go ahead. Go ahead. All right, tailing ponds. This is what I want to talk about. Right now they say that there are 42,000 acres of tailing ponds in Alberta right now. Actual size of that is 170 square kilometers or 66 square miles. Just to put this in perspective, this city that we're in right now, the city of Lincoln, Nebraska, is 74 square miles. That's how big the tailing ponds are. That's just in mass area. These are deep. Too. Most of them are 300 feet deep. So it's not just like surface water where it's 2 or 3 feet deep. This is deep stuff. And the Environmental Defense Canada report says 11 million liters leak per day at the tar sands. That equals out to 2.9 million gallons per day are leaking out of the tailing ponds. That makes the BP oil spill look like a mud puddle. Go ahead. I like this one. This is actually one that came out probably about 2 years ago, and I could actually see my daughter asking me this question. But yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously Hillary Clinton. I think that actually came out when the Alberta Clipper came through northern Minnesota, was when this editorial came out. And Secretary Clinton did sign off on that one, even though it was basically commissioned by President Bush. Some of the safety concerns that we have. Life cycle. How long can a pipeline be used? In northern Minnesota, we have pipelines that are over 60 years old. They were put in 1949. They don't have obviously the same regulations as they do now. When you go through a lot of the swamps in Minnesota, you actually see exposed pipeline. They're just laid on top of the pipe, on top of the ground, and covered up with dirt. Others of them, when they went through lakes, they didn't go around them and dig under them like they are supposedly doing now. In the city of, or in the lake of Cass Lake, it is actually laid on the bottom of the lake. They did it. They just weighted it down and laid it on the bottom of the lake. If you ever get a chance and go Google Earth or whatever, you can actually see where the pipeline goes through Cass Lake, and it's pretty cool. Well, not really, but if you want to go back, actually, smart pigging. What that is the companies will say that they have all the technology in the world and that the pipelines are safe, and because they send this little smart pig through the lines, and they X-ray the pipes to see if there's any cracks or rust or anything else like that that's going on. The problem with that is that according to regulations, They only have to do it once every 2 years. So I don't know if any of you guys are engineers or anything else like that, but I'm not, and I kind of know that rust kind of happens more than just once every 2 years. And it can be a big rust spot in 2 years. A lot of the pipelines are saying, like the Enbridge pipeline up in northern Minnesota, they say that they do it once a year. Unfortunately, in one of the pictures showing that I'll show you guys later on, is that last summer they did the smart pig through one of the lines that's 60 years old. They found a flaw. They marked it, they didn't go out and check it. That ended up leaking this spring. And it ended up being noticed by a forest fire. Had a forest fire there, it lit the oil on fire, and then that's how people even noticed that there's even a leak there. It's just kind of from a 1-inch crack in the pipe. Pipeline abandonment. This is a big question. I went to 4 public hearings for the Keystone XL. 1 in Atkinson, Nebraska, 2 in South Dakota, and 1 in Washington, D.C. just recently. And in the 3 meetings in Nebraska and South Dakota, pipeline abandonment was a major issue in every one. And all the farmers and everyone else that were there asked, what's going to happen with the pipe when it's done? And because it's not really addressed in the draft EIS, it just says they're going to follow Pipeline Safety Standard Administration rules. Their Pipeline Safety Standard Administration says they are going to purge the lines, fill them with nitrogen or water or some other non-toxic substance and leave them in the ground. So as a Native American, I sit and look and say, seven generations from now, what's that going to do to that generation? What that tells me is that we're going to have basically Superfund sites crisscrossing the United States because there won't be any oil going through them anymore. They'll have already used that. So they'll just be rust buckets. And we'll end up having sinkholes and everything else going through them all. Go ahead. This is interesting. This is a picture in Bemidji, Minnesota, Highway 2. If you look on the other side of the highway, you can see a little machine kind of in the ditch. That is the horizontal bore that they drill underneath roads and underneath rivers. Okay. The next day, and I mean the next day, Highway 2 collapsed. And they said, oh my goodness, that's just really strange. It never happened before. It's an accident. Obviously. We lost that one. Okay. Go ahead. This is a picture of the pipe that I talked about earlier in Deer River, Minnesota this spring. It is an exposed pipe. Basically on the outside is asphalt, kind of like a shingle. Because it was exposed to open conditions, they had to wrap it or else it would have rusted even faster. That is what is burned off. That is what you basically see on the side of the pipe, is the asphalt. Go ahead. This is the spill site. If you look way down on the far left-hand side corner, where you see a kind of a machine down there, that is where the 1-inch pipe is. And all the white stuff that you see is not snow. I know you think of Minnesota and snow. That is actually water covered with diapers type material. That is what they use to soak up the oil in these type of spills. Coincidentally, right now, they're still having, with the Gulf Coast and everything else like that, they're trying to say they're going to put peat moss in the ocean and absorb the oil. And they showed that it worked. The oil absorbed to it. Problem here is that it's peat moss here, and it's absorbed to the oil. So now when they're trying to dig it out, it just drips out of the peat moss when they dig it out, and it sucks into the more peat moss. So they're having a heck of a time trying to get it out of the water. Go ahead. This is a close-up of one of what I call the diaper. It's actually
It's a dirty diaper.
Yeah, it's a very dirty diaper. It's quite the phenomenon, actually, because it only picks up water, or the oil. It doesn't pick up water. So when and how they do it is kind of funny. I have a video of it. A guy stands there with a pitchfork and basically flops all these into a garbage can. That's how they clean it up. Go ahead. Another picture of the dump site, or the dump site, the spill site with the pipe. We did a protest up in Cass Lake. This is one of the signs that we had, which coincidentally, I think if you really look in the background, you can see a white truck. That was an Enbridge truck that went driving by just when we actually had that sign up. It was kind of funny. Go ahead. How does this affect First Nations, Native people? First Nations, it causes elevated cancer rates. When you have 5 cases of bile duct, rare bile duct cancers that are confirmed, 2 of them actually died before they were confirmed. Out of 1,200 people, there's serious concerns. When you look at the United States rates of those type of cancers, it's 1 out of 100,000 people. There they have 5 out of 1,200. They have loss of hunting lands and game. Some of the people were showing you before and after pictures before of what the forest looked like and what it looks like now. Obviously it looks like a moonscape. And coincidentally, I just learned this the other day, is there's no more muskrats. Muskrats live in the water, and the waters are polluted. They said that when the last times they were catching them, the muskrats were bleeding. They had like bloody noses and stuff like that. And when they go into their muskrat houses, it would smell of oils. So there's no more, that's one of their main food staples up there. And they no longer have that food staple. Fish and game have elevated chemicals in them. A lot of them, there's reports of, and you can see, I've seen pictures of large cancerous boils on fish. But I didn't want to really get too graphic on this. Go ahead. In the U.S., the Keystone XL does not go through any tribal lands, any trust lands, per se, like through the reservations or anything else like that. It does go around them. They strategically placed it. If you look at the Cheyenne River in South Dakota and the Fort Peck Reservation up in Montana, it goes within probably 3 miles of the reservation boundary, which then crosses underneath the river, which is their southern boundaries of each of the reservations. So, yeah, it affects them. What that does then is it threatens to have their traditional homelands, they're crunched down into reservations or moved. So there are cultural sites along the route that they will be having to look at. That's a system called NEPA. That's a federally funded program, and it could be a great idea. The idea is great, the outcome is great, but there's no rules as to how they get to the outcome. So if Paul were to go through there and just drive through the pipeline route and say, yep, I didn't see a thing, he could sign off on it and NEPA would be approved. Where if Duane went through there and he walked the route and documented everything, and to say what all was there and everything else like that, he would have done the same NEPA process. But there's 2 different ways of doing that. This is what I'm trying to show you, is that NEPA is not a for sure science. Because some places will do that. One of the places that is doing that, prime example in northern Nebraska, Ponca, up by the Sandhills. The Ponca tribe is no longer in Nebraska. They are in Oklahoma. After this meeting, I go to a meeting in New York, or in Columbus, New York, and then I go down to Oklahoma, and I'm going to be meeting with the Sac-Fox Tribal Council and also the Ponca Tribal Council. What I'm going to talk to the Ponca Tribal Council is about their traditional homelands, and that asking them to pass a resolution in opposition to the Keystone XL. Go ahead. Kind of got ahead of myself here. What we are seeking tribal resolutions. And basically what we want the resolutions to say is that the tribes along the route are opposing it, to bring it to Secretary Clinton and Secretary Salazar to tell them, we don't want this. This isn't just a non-native thing. This is Native Americans too. What I have on here also is the Nez Perce tribe in Idaho has passed a resolution, and you're going to say, why is the Nez Perce tribe passing a resolution against the tar sands? There is, if you turn to the next slide, there's a thing called the heavy haul together, kind of like